Our Father in heaven, honored be thy name. May thy kingdom come. May thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us each day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us on a righteous path, and guard us from the evil one. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. I'm just going to show some tools, and I'm going to drop some tools in the description of something that a brother had asked me to go over, which is exactly haplogroups HiJK, iJK, and GHiJK, which are some very interesting haplogroups. But first, before I do that, I want to point out some 3 tools that I think are very important. And the 3 tools will be these 3 tools I'm going to mention here. I'm actually going to open up an Evernote since I'm starting off. I'm going to make a little notepad here. It's a little new note. All the little notes opening up real fast. Let that do its little thing. All right. Let me point out some groups real fast. Make sure this list is reset. And I want to set it by age so that we can get an origin story. So we're going to go from what's the earliest to the latest. We're going to use some of the tools too. Okay, so first I'm going to make a notepad. I'm just going to call it tools for roots. And I'm going to put all the tools that I think is important to know about and how they're used in the description. Now, this one is going to be YTree. Now, what's important about YTree is that they will tell you themselves that YTree is a tool, is a free to use tool, right? It's an open source. Just to go to some of the about me of it, right? They just do some, is their homepage where they talk about, right? They'll solve your Y chromosome puzzle. So that's really nice for people who want to maybe get deeper into these SNPs. But what's important about how YTree works is that YTree is also using tests from modern peoples. But you got to understand that when they're talking about the SNPs and the mutations in them, they're just testing SNPs and mutations that they would see in you that would go back in time. So it's very important to kind of understand what they're getting, right? And a lot of their results will be like, for example, recent peoples and things like that. Now, you'll have some that will go back. You probably have some like 1800 stuff like that. But a lot of it is kind of like family trees and things like that. A lot of it actually has connections to family tree DNA and things like that. That actually, in a way, gives the information of the SNPs, which can be good or bad, depending on how people feel about that. I'm going to go to about, kind of get a little understanding of what they're doing. So what's interesting is you'll find a kind of a shared, and what's important is the one that I'm going to show, SNP tracker, and this one right here, heat map, they also use the same database. So they're going to have very similar database. So when this database is updated, that database will be updated because it pretty much will be using the same raw data. Even right here, it says our service isn't limited only by the analysis of individual raw data, but also has a social focus. So it just talks about obviously what their goal is and everything to bring people together and stuff. Obviously, they're really serious about what they're doing, but they're looking at the variations in those SNPs, right? Looking at the mutations of the Y chromosome, and not just the Y chromosome, but let me actually go to a video here because I actually meant to go to this new one that they're trying to make. That it's kind of hard to find, but I have found it and I posted in one of the little videos. So I'm going to grab it real fast from here. And what I posted was just something in the description. And it's right here. YTree also is now trying to build a mtDNA because YTree technically is for like Y DNA, Y male DNA. But now they have something under construction which is the mtDNA breakdown, which is very important because this was lacking for a while on how the mtDNA breaks down. Is also important because we know as a man is born, he has to come through the matrix. So, like the scripture says, the woman's womb is considered a matrix. So he has to be born of a woman. So a man is also going to be tied with the woman. A lot of times you see that when you see autosomal tests, PCA tests, right? Little different tests like that, right? GED match, things like that. They're going to get into those, the nitty gritty of the details of who was actually connected, right? But it's always nice to get like those pinpoint Y chromosomes and things like that. So obviously, when they're talking about what they have and everything, obviously they just let you know what they have, and they let you know about the data and everything. They're pretty honest about what they have and everything. So it's a lot of stuff on the about me. There's they go deep. They have other conversation on where they get their files from and everything and whatnot. I'm just gonna go back. So this is a very nice tool, right? Talks about novel finds and different variants like that. But it's a nice tool because you want to be careful also on how these trees are made. Now you got to also remember what he's given us here, what information he's actually given us here, what we actually have. We can look in like the archive and things like that and know like where he's getting certain things and whatnot and why, what's being updated, what's being changed, and what he actually does. And it gives you like little breakdowns of how it's being changed and what's being updated and where he's getting information. A lot of it's actually modern SNPs and modern peoples. A lot of people actually exist to this day. A lot of people that we actually find with these SNPs exist to this day. But you got to be careful when looking at this site so that you can have a good understanding of what it's illustrating. That it's going to give you kind of like the out of Africa concept, but you got to understand that it's not going to be, what's the word I'm looking for, giving you a like total SNP breakdown, right? When I say total SNP breakdown, like mutation wise, right? Like what descended from the ancient human, right? That split from Neanderthals that brought to us, right? This is just a small chart of humans, right? This is not going to be like a star graph. This is like a normal chart. So that's kind of important to also notice when thinking about roots. In order to find like roots, you got to look at fossils, right? But this is a nice site for pretty much finding modern peoples and kind of getting an understanding on where they are. So let's just like go down to GHiJK, right? So GHiJK is a large family. Now, when you look at the exact SNPs and the mutation of it, it's a solid family. It's a family that makes everything underneath it, but we would know that like the sons of F will make all these, but they don't make CT lineages sons of DE. Like for example, if we click CT, we can see under CT there is obviously, like we was looking at, F being the father of all these, but F sons doesn't make under CT DE. So DE is another family, though it's under CT. So, but we're gonna know that F doesn't make that. We can also double check that in star graphs under unrooted charts and look at the roots, the nodes, pinpoints. The most important ones we want to know for this family is GHiJK, HiJK, and iJK. So these are going to be key for the conversation that we're having today, that we're talking about these nodes, some tools to find these nodes. Now, these nodes, what's interesting is, notice something interesting. This is how we know that this is going to be not based upon fossils, because we don't have the fossils of iJK on this listing. If we look here, we can see different things of the SNPs and different breakdowns of it, but then it jumps to the next node. If I try to like get deeper into it, right, it's just gonna take me right to the pinpoint of this node, but it doesn't give me like which haplogroups we found of iJK, what people, because iJK is actually a population. When you see these nodes, they're actually populations. That means there's multiple people with that same SNP. So that's important to know. That's not like one person and all of a sudden you get one person from that. It's a node. That means like everyone who is IJ or K ultimately would come from this father. That means they will come from this person. That's important to know, because this is going to let us know that we're not getting those mutations or those fossils of iJK. But I'll show you how we can find those fossils. We can also look on Snip Tracker, and Snip Tracker also has tools. I'm going to actually put iJK here, or rather, I have to put its full code, which iJK necessarily is going to be, I'll point at it on here. And if you have any questions, let me know, because I got the my phone on to keep watch. Find on page. Let me refresh this page. It's acting out on me. All right. Just so I can pull up that exact one, because I want to put it on the thing. But the reason why I want to show this tool, because there's a lot of ways that this tool can be used for the right thing and for the wrong thing. Let me see what's going on in this one. Or I must be clicking the wrong thing or something. All right. Okay. It just looks different. Maybe it's something updated, or I'm just using a different. Oh yeah, I'm using Firefox. This looks different. All right. Let me just type it down. All right, that's what I want. L15. iJK L15. All right. So if I go to Snip Tracker right here, and I put iJK L15, the Snip Tracker is going to take a while because iJK is massive. Sometimes you can't even open this on a phone. It has to open up on a like computer or something that can open up it. So right here is just crashed or something. Let's try it again, because it's a lot of mutations and everything for us to see it, and it's just going to show like descendants and everything of it. It's going to show like it's descendants and everything of the SNP. But let me actually open it up on. Okay, there it is. All right, so see what I was saying, it just took a long time to open it, but it's a massive SNP. It's a large family. As we know, iJK makes all the sons of K-M9 and the IJ son. So anyone who's a J comes from iJK. That means they will tie with anyone who will come from K. So IJ and K will come from the same fathers. So very important, they'll come from the same descendants. So that means that there will be a family of iJK existing, and then all of a sudden, right, as that family goes on, they get mutations, because that's one thing that happens throughout time. That's why we don't see certain nodes like iJK and certain nodes like that today, because they existed at a certain time frame until they kept mutating. So we don't see them today. But this is going to be all descendants. This is not going to be all iJK directly, right? That's what Snip Tracker is showing us, the descendants of that SNP. That's going to be important. So now we can see who are descendants of this family, of this SNP, who we can see as a very large family, right? We can see that that's a very clear thing. And we can get a good understanding that it looks fairly just like it's lines of IJ. Let's see if it will work if I use the star. IJ, let's say J-M304, right? We can see kind of like it almost looks the same, because it would have came from iJK, or we can say K-M9, which is the root of, after iJK, you get the K groups, which is going to be T and L and R and O and all those things, right? Coming from iJK to K-M9, right? So you can see it's going to take a little bit here, because it's also as big as, almost as iJK. But like we said, the descendants, the sons, the children of them. So you can see right there, very massive, as we can see right there. So snip tracker is checking modern snips. That's important. That's important too for how that's going to be understood. Now, that doesn't mean that modern snips won't match ancient snips, because oftentimes modern snips match ancient snips. But sometimes if you look at the ancient fossils, they kind of show some interesting things sometimes. So you got to always make sure you look at the fossils. These are going to be the snips. Now, also this tool, this tool does the same thing, but you also notice something interesting, that a lot of places where these are, you'll also find it for the design here, for this, the full picture of this, the tracker on GHiJK, right? It's gonna let it open up. Gonna make sure I see what's going on here. All right, and let me turn my screen share on, as I've been having a nice conversation to myself without the screen share. Amen, family. Amen. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for letting me know that, since I saw that. Yep, that's right. This Sunday, y'all willing, we might have a conversation with Jungle Jargon, but he might come up today, maybe, if he wants to. So let me show you what I was showing. So first things I was showing was the GHiJK, and I was showing that they're having the GHiJK under construction, right? It's under construction, and we need to know the first and most important thing is that this is a normal chart. I have spoke about this before, the importance of how these charts are made, or how these charts are, right? The differences between charts, right? You got your normal chart, you got your unrooted chart. Let me show a picture there, as I think it's nice to show and tell at the same time. So let me first pull up this picture right here, and why, and the reason why is important. The reason why is important. Okay, right here. All right. So let me show you something here and why it's important, what I'm going to show real fast. What I'm going to show on this GHiJK is going to be a normal chart. It's going to be a normal chart. But there's a difference between a normal chart, unrooted chart, and things of that sort. So there's a major difference between that. So I'm just going to give a quick summary of those things. I'm going to show you real fast. Chart is a normal chart. You'll see it just like what we see on that tree, that GHiJK. Have different designs, like a circular mode chart. Sometimes you'll see that they'll have those designs, but usually what you want to look for when you get to the roots of stuff, you want to look for something called an unrooted mode, because an unrooted mode chart is going to start showing you how they separate and everything. Then you can start getting to those nodes of what's in the middle and between these, that's going to be making all these different lineages that we see today. So let's get back to the tree over here. So I'm going to put it on this map here. Now we can notice that the map that we're seeing here of iJK, now remember, this is not iJK direct haplogroups, but this is going to be iJK's descendants. So it's going to be those SNPs, the SNPs, so those mutations that's going to come from iJK. So that's what we're going to be seeing here, is that we're going to be seeing mutations from that iJK, all the descendants of iJK. If we go to SNP tracker, we can see it in the covering of, basically, as we can see, like those same areas. So we can see some over here, 300 over here. We got 700 over here, right? 600 over here, 200 over here. So we got a couple of them here, thousands over here, right? We got a lot of them all around. And if we go back to right here, the SNP tracker, we can see there's a lot of them over here, right? It's like we see on that chart, and a lot of them over here as well. So it's kind of spread out because it's actually using the same, they're all using the same listing of pretty much modern peoples and groups that are basically given their genetic testing and tests that have been done. So it's important to know that this is going to be more closer to our time, more modern information, but showing us descendants of those SNPs, even tests of people today. I know it's because we can also verify it by some of our tests are in this database, and that's something that we know. We can also look on this one, for example. Let's look on this list. Let's go and put iJK L, what was it? I think I still got it paste, or I don't. Let me make sure I note that again right here. L15. I know it's one of those ones. All right. iJK dash L15. All right. We'll see if it'll work on this one or if I got to put a different code because it all depends if it will on this one. So this one, I might have to put it, spell it out a little different because sometimes they will be a little different. And sometimes you can just find code. So let's see L16. Let's see. So sometimes on these things, this one you'll have to get because this one doesn't have any of those fossils, and this one, the heat tracker, this one right here. Now, since we just spoke about Y tree and how this one is right, still using modern snips, we can even see when we go to the test and who they have on the test and everything, and what people, because you want to be careful when you're looking at those ages, those mutation rate or the mutation ages, right? That doesn't mean that they found a fossil that old. That means that that snip is measured to be about that old, to measure that its ancestors would stretch down to that age. But the understanding here is that we don't have that. That's not like it's a fossil, right? We don't have a, like, for example, we can't say, oh, have a J that's 40,000 years old in a fossil, right? But the interesting thing of J is that J's split from iJK after about after like 15, 16,000, around somewhere around there. So J is obviously a late member to the party, not the latest, but it's late. It's not as early as GHiJK or iJK, right? It would come after iJK, after IJ. So that's why you got to be careful on some of these SNPs, the mutations rates that we're seeing here, because like I said, these are going to be based upon like the out of Africa concept, not based upon fossils, not upon what they found. So that's going to be very important. So most likely right here, I can probably find like groups like something that's underneath it, like IJ. Let's see rather if we can find something like IJ. So if I copy this, and let's see if I try it on here, because you can find a couple different groups, but I'll see if you can find IJ on this. Because like I said, these right here, they're using modern people. They're not using fossils. So you see why I'm not really finding these type of fossils, because what this is looking for, is modern people. But let's say I put something like a modern person like J dash P 58, right? It's gonna show me that because that's gonna be a modern person. So it's gonna show me modern SNPs on the heat tracker. Show them where they would be at today. So it will show us where these groups will be at today, and a kind of like a quick summary of these things. But remember, this is not going to be fossils. This is going to be what we're seeing today, and it's a summary. That's what's important too, is that it's going to be a major summary. So if I go back and let's say I want to find like the node of all the J groups, J dash 304, right? Notice it doesn't show me that. Now we actually know that that's going to be a major node, right? J dash M304, right? If we go over here and go to J here, you can notice something about J is that J starts with this one, J dash M304. Now We don't have that node today because it split and it became J1 and J2. But that would have been a father of J1 and J2 that would have originally made all those descendants that he doesn't exist today. So when we look on like trees, snip trees and things like that, like let's say right here, we go right here, right? We don't have this one and the breakdown of it, right? We know that it's going to have different descendants. We know that's going to have different descendants, but we know that this is not going to be a right here. This is not going to be a fossil displayed right here. There's no fossil being displayed right here. But I'll show you how we can find those fossils, how we can see the fossils. But this is nice to note for the sons of today, how the sons are tied, how the sons are connected, how the descendants are connected. It's interesting too because we can get into the scientific way of it and get into when they got separated, or hypothetically how close is their separation, right? How close is the tie and everything, and we can get a good understanding on those things with a very close tie. That's kind of important because we can get an understanding if these are actually related, or is it just like, some people say it's just contamination or something like that. Is it actually actual relation? Is the test, can we test it and prove it every time that they're related? iJK is obviously related to K. iJK makes IJ and K. So iJK, HiJK, GHiJK comes from F. So we can see iJK comes from HiJK, comes from GHiJK, comes from F. So what does that mean? That means iJK would unite what? IJ and K. So if iJK unites IJ and K, that means HiJK has to unite what? H, IJ, and K. If we go back, we can see that right there, H, IJ, and K comes from one node or one clade. So one clade makes H, IJ, K. That makes IJ and K. So you can see what's going on there. Going back one more node, GHiJK. So GHiJK, from that node, from that clade, comes G and comes the HiJK. That's all together. That mutation, the whole mutation of that and the breakdown of it, we can actually break that down and find out that that whole family of H is an Indo-European family that actually is highly tied. And how do I know that that's Indo-European, right? Now, why is that important? Because truth is important. But let me show you something real fast on this right here. So we did find some ancient HiJK fossils in the said Mesolithic time frame. Now, we already know that that was in an area that connects multiple different cultures and everything. It would lead to cultures that will come in later on in the areas of Europe, about five after the 15 to 5,000 years before present, they say. And that would lead us to the rise of the about 4,000 BC, where languages rise up, where we'll start to get the Proto-Indo-European languages like that will start to come in, right? This is Mesolithic on to the Neolithic. That's give or take that time frame transition to the rising of children of Noah. Obviously, that makes sense for these lines to be there if they're going to be of this story. So HiJK, iJK, showing us that the family is tied in upper areas of European areas, right? For example, here, right? I had talked about this before when I was talking about the groups that were called the, how you say that, core Mongol, how you say that, individuals, right? And I talked about how they went through pretty much up into Europe, but they also had some settlement in Africa. So that's important. That's all that's important to understand. So the reason why that's important is because we can notice that with the tree, that we can see it right on the top, that F right here, F-M89 or F star, the F node, is actually what makes this family here. So that's going to be very important. That's going to be a kind of like a head root that's going to make GHiJK, HiJK, and iJK. That's gonna be very, very important to know about these families. Is that we have to note that F-M89, right, doesn't make anything under CT, because what's under CT? DE and CF. So remember, CF makes F. So we'll go back. Why is that important? because this whole family is one whole family. And if you understand this, it will solve multiple problems that are going on in the world today. GHiJK, HiJK, and iJK. You notice how we don't get the mutations of the. I can't go into these direct SNPs. I can't click this and get into this one right here. But if I wanted to get into G, I can click G and get into G, to the SNPs of G. I can go really deep into G. I can go into each one of these family trees and get into where they came from, and how close their ties are and everything, because they live today. But if I want to go into GHiJK, I can't, because the Y tree, the SNP tracker, and the heat tree are using modern SNPs. That's what they're using. They're using modern mutations, modern finds. Now, how can we find? Now, if we want to find ties to people today, we can use that. But if we want to find fossils, we need to look at someone that's examining fossils and look at fossil records. Now, there's a couple different ways, reports we have from fossil records that we can use. So first, let me put these tools here. So the first tool right here is Y tree. So Y tree, and I'll put these in a description afterwards if someone wants to use them. And I'll put the female Y tree. So this one's under construction. And like I said, remember, if you want me to go, I can break down how the actual root of the female line is. It's very interesting to note, but notice that it's not L. There's actually a deeper root that's not L. That's important. That L is not actually the real root, but L does have ties to people, but not the way that people may think. Is more deeper than people may know. So that's something that's important to know, that we do have like roots to the lineages of mtDNA, but the way that it is formed is very interesting. I would say the way that is made is very, very interesting. But I'll put this over here. This is just something that's nice to know for. This is obviously modern people, right? This is just interesting because getting modern people, you can get very interesting things, right? This one doesn't really have. It doesn't look like it has any maps yet or anything like that. But they do have a lot of people who, like L3 and stuff like that, where they would be at right now, like India, Egypt, Mexico, things like that, right? And other lines, you got your MLs, all different things like that. This one, right? Obviously, it's still under construction, as you can see here, so it's not going to be something that, like I said, this is still modern people too, so it's not something that is necessarily needed for understanding fossils, but it's nice for noting modern ties and things like that. So that's nice to have in a way. Maybe they might update that T tree or something. And the SNP tracker right here, remember, this is gonna be modern, right? All these things are giving us modern information of where they are today and everything, but it's gonna give us key factors about their connections. So it's gonna be very important from those things. So this is just gonna be SNP tracker, right? And then this one is going to be the heat tracker. So you've seen how we tried to search those ancient nodes, like this one, certain nodes, certain ancient nodes or extinct nodes. It doesn't show, but it'll show you modern SNPs of modern groups in certain places. That's kind of important to know, that we had went over before, like, I don't know, G1, right? Or what we have here, right? You can see different breakdowns of things like that. I'm just gonna save this one over here. So this is also just called, you can see right there, they call it the heat map. But they're using the same, all of them are basically using the same database, right? That's important to know, because that means there's other database that would have extra information, more information. But a lot of them have this database that kind of targets in this area, kind of like more towards this area. They don't really have a lot of results over here and stuff. They don't really have a lot of results over here and stuff. They have mostly results that are like more based around putting on a map around this area. That doesn't mean that they're not found anywhere around here or anything like that. That's just, it's kind of like a summary result. That's what it is, because it's modern information. So even the placement of the people could be subjective. So they could be they could have took a test when they was out in another state or another country, took the test there, and actually not had lived there. But these tools, one, two, three, four, these four tools are going to be modern tools for testing locations of modern people. So that's going to be very important. Now, if we want to look at some examples of how to find fossils. This is a great tool, Havlo Tree, because what it's actually doing is looking at different independent papers, and this is why it also takes a long time when going over fossils and stuff, because you're looking at different independent papers, and those independent papers take some time to go over. And so what he pretty much did was put a list of pretty much years and haplogroups and the papers, the actual papers for where he finds these finds and stuff. So let me just actually pull up here, make sure this is set at that. All right. All right. So first things first is point out some of the haplogroups. So we already point out how GHiJK, right? GHiJK ends up making HiJK. So that's going to be very important that we kind of note that. So HiJK, there's HiJK and everything. So we know that these mutations are going to be related. So HiJK there, we can see that these mutations are going to be related. That's going to be very important. It's important to take those groups and tie a picture with the fossils to get an understanding with them. And notice the ones with the higher years. Higher years just means closer to Adam. That's all that it means, pretty much. Higher years is just mean closer to Adam. And if we note with the fossils, right? So iJK right there, this is gonna be the actual like fossils, and we can actually like, if we wanted to, we can look at the direct papers, the individual papers at the individual places where they're at. So there's a place in France. This is the time frame, Neolithic time frame. So most likely Neolithic, this place in France. And I had showed before how you look these things up on paper, right? If you use this little tool, you just copy this last one right here. Notice if it's going to be either Bronze Age, Iron Age, Neolithic, Mesolithic, Paleolithic, whatnot, and just copy this one and this one. So, you know, these are obviously years before present. So take 2000 off of that, right? That's going to be about, give or take, like the transition of the Neolithic to Bronze Age. So we'll try first Neolithic, then we'll try Bronze Age. See how you find these. We'll say Neolithic. That's weird. So you can see that you will find like certain papers that will start to have the information on it, right? And it's nice to get like the like pinpoint material papers. And I had checked a lot of his stuff, and a lot of stuff is verified. So here is that paper. You can see right here of human population demographic on the French territory, dynamics of the French territory between 7,000 and 2,000 before present. That means 7,000 to 2,000 before present most likely means they're looking at fossils, right? They're going to be looking at actual like fossils. So on the paper, we can see that, yep, they're looking at individual Neolithic tombs, right? They're looking at fossils here. So that's one thing you want to verify, is that if you're looking at a hypothetical paper, something saying, well, E1, B1A might have been in Africa 12,000 years ago, might have, but there's no fossil. That's important versus a solid fossilized culture, right? that's going to be very important and key when understanding a lot of these things. This one, this really just going to have a couple different things on it on the paper. Close it. That's another. That's a nice way to research each individual one of these individually. I want to have a conversation with Brother Jungle Jargon on. I have a paper set that I want to go over each and every one of these cultures. As you can see, iJK is around I and stuff like that. It's got to have a reason why they're all around that area. They become earliest Indo-Europeans and things like that. That's important because it's gonna give us major ties to families, right? Key points and things like that, right? You see GHiJK, right? HiJK, right? So that's these. All these are important because they're going to give us some keys, some major key understanding of certain groups and whatnot. So they're going to give us some family ties. So these are going to be fossils, though. This is going to be the only place we can find like the actual official fossils. In fact, certain haplogroups here that were recently found that even like places like Wikipedia wouldn't even have the information to. So, like for example, let's say HiJK, right? Let's say the haplogroup that makes JK and everything underneath it, GHiJK. And notice what it'll say about GHiJK on its writings on Wikipedia. Remember, Wikipedia is a primary source. That's is a source that talks about primary sources. So they need a primary source first. They need a primary source first to talk about it. So they need a primary source. But notice right here, GHiJK is a major clade of haplogroup F, right? F-M89. So F-M89 JK groups. It says its branches subsequently, they basically divide into two direct descendants, right? Haplogroup G and HiJK and all that. You see what's going on there? Now, what's interesting, right? What's interesting here is if we look down right here, watch what it says here. The basal paragroup GHiJK star has not been identified in living males or ancient remains. Now, you got to understand when did they say that? When they write that, they wrote that like a long time ago, right? They wrote that a long time ago, right? That's very important. They need to update this one because we actually found fossils of those exact groups, of those exact ones that I was talking about that we didn't find, because we actually found GHiJK, right? You can see right here, deep in Turkey, right? We're gonna have GHiJK, right? And a couple different places. We got actually a couple finds of GHiJK that has recently been found. So what's important to know is that GHiJK, HiJK, and iJK, these are living fossils, right? These are living people today. People are descendants from them. They're going to be living people today that are going to be descended from them, but they're going to be one node, one clade, right? They're going to be all one, all together, all united, right? That's going to be very important and key. Very important and key. But I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put this on here, right? And I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to put it in this note. And this is going to be for false. So I'll constantly add tools and stuff on here. For example, pointed out, just gonna go to it here, as this is a great tool too that basically shows like the actual like fossils and everything. Let me just go to it here. Right here, we had pointed out before. Right on this little list, I'm gonna just open it up here on this little list here. There's gonna be pretty much information to a couple of different groups and stuff. Fossils. Right? Now that's the thing. That's the thing about fossils. When touching on fossils and ancient information and stuff like that, it's gonna take some time. That's one of those. That's what happens when going over that stuff. It just takes time. It's just gonna take time. But this one right here, this is gonna be a data sheet that actually a geneticist had put together. Um, they're gonna be pretty much fossils of YAP groups and CF groups and all types of groups that are found in pretty much Eurasia. And he pretty much stores it on this thing. Let me make sure I grab the one, view raw. It might just be right here. I'll just grab the the direct download pretty much. I'll just show what it is. All right. All right. So here's pretty much idea what it is. Let me skip that for now. All right. So you can kind of get a little understanding of what's going on here. Got a list of some ancient places and everything. Some of them we just kind of pointed out different things, but he kind of got like different finds on here and the mutations. So he gonna have like O's and N's and stuff, right? I's. He got E's on here. So he's gonna have some in some of these places, some E1B1Bs and stuff like that. And it's gonna be like a lot of different fossils on one sheet, and it's fossils. So it's like Neolithic type stuff and whatnot. And it's gonna be like with the year, so BC, letting us know on some of these things, giving us the pinpoints of the location. So sometimes looking for the fossils can be a little more complex. That doesn't mean that it's not findable, but it's not as easy as the snip tracker and stuff like that. So it's gonna have a little challenge at times. So we can see there's some Natufians. So those some groups we had talked about before. So E1B1, right? E1B1 makes all E1B1 sons. So in Israel, right? That means all E1B1, right? Descendants. We can see right here all E groups. That's gonna because this is actually E dash M96. That's gonna be pre-pottery Neolithic. So what say West Asia? So the E group Neolithic fossils. You can see that's obviously in Jordan and everything. So very very important. All E groups. They're the earliest E is found up there. Here's that iJK Paleolithic Europe. So we can see we go into the culture and everything of it right there, right? Long time ago. So we're talking ancient ages, right? Fossils, major nodes that are fossils that are going to bring families together. This is how you bring families together with these type of fossils, these type of nodes. They're going to bring ties together, major ties, major families that start to exist only in the Bronze Age, like J and stuff like that only exist in the Bronze Age in the Levant. They only come from their iJK groups. That's important that they're going to descend from these lines. That's very, very important and key because we can note that on the family. There's the HiJK, right? Paleolithic Europe and everything. So some fossils on here, major fossils, right? There's another iJK. So that's why I said iJK is important. Neolithic, final Neolithic Europe, right? Ties that whole family together. iJK, right? They exist in the Neolithic into the Bronze Age. That's why iJK doesn't exist today because about the Bronze Age, iJK mutations they're finished mutating, right? That's important. That's going to be a major family tie. So iJK, major family tie. that ties a major family together. So you can see all the way up to where we get to Coraxis and different cultures like that. So you can see, remember we talked about that the J groups are highly Coraxis. That's important to know how they get into Levant from the Coraxis culture. A lot of the J1 gets into Levant from the Coraxis culture. I got a beloved brother that's actually J2. He actually is an honest man, right? He knows the truth of these haplogroups and everything. We talk about that. These J groups are from Europe because we do look at the fossils and we have a lot of the fossils in the areas of Europe. That's okay because it's just being honest, right? It's only wrong if we say it's not. Say it didn't start in Europe. It started in the Levant? No. It didn't start in Arabia? No. It started in Europe as a Eurasian and a Indo-European group. Look at how the iJK group lasts to a long time, all the way to the late Roman period. iJK, showing us that that family is heavily tied, right? Even to where we get some later mutations of iJK. So that's going to be important, tying the family all together. We got HiJK right there, right? That one most likely is making some of those H groups and everything, or some of the later K groups. So you can see right there H. So most likely it is making those H groups. So look at how many H's we got there. So that's just only reason I could tell because the weight of the mutation is, right? The weight of the mutation is, and also as we can see, the years they're all by each other and everything. But this is obviously a portion of the amount of fossils. There's also more independent studies and stuff like that. Here's an E1B1A there and everything. What we have here, Middle Age Europe, Iberia. We can see Granada, Spain. Looks about very early time frame. So like close coming in. I would say that's about what major events happened there, because we know that the Muslims are pushing out the Jews out of Arabia. They're going 711 AD. They're going to Spain, Granada. They're going up. The Moors are taking over the areas of Spain, and you got Jews in the areas of Spain until later 1400. So this obviously is going to be, going back, taking us about, the time frame where we expect, Jews to be there. So it's just interesting how we see E1B1A up there, right? In that time. That's just something that just we're not talking about right now, but that's something always worth talking about, as I think is always interesting with those finds. But as we can see, we can go into a lot of different fossils and talk about how the cultures are tied, how they're all tied together. Why is that important? How the cultures are tied and everything, and all those different things, because it's going to tell us origins. It's going to tell us the origins. Some of the most ignored haplogroups is from the CF groups, the F groups, GHiJK, HiJK, and iJK, because those, especially iJK, is if you had to remember anything that I'm saying today, remember iJK, right? You got to remember anything, remember iJK, because it ties IJ and K, which is a group that if you understand will take away a lot of problems. And when I say a lot of problems, I mean a lot of problems. So this right here is going to be fossils. That's going to be all that's going to be from fossils. So it's got some other stuff on it and whatnot. I'll just copy it and move it. So, and I obviously, as you can see, if you go to like Synthetic Sunday and stuff like that, those, when we start to talk like origin stuff, we're talking fossils, right? We're bringing out fossils, independent papers, and stuff like that. It takes a long time to go over because we got to talk about what's on the paper and what haplogroup they found and how we know it's ancient and all that. The truth behind the culture and how the history has ties. So all this, right? This is all going to be pretty much information to, you know, how to find these things. Let me actually separate this. So, there's an importance to know in this, that there's sometimes listings or lists of stuff that are ancient, and there's a list of stuff that are modern. Now, it's important to understand also when I say this that a lot of times you gotta be careful on these years because sometimes things can be exaggerated. But we can always obviously go over those things carefully. But if you have any questions, let me know. Statements, anything, let me know, family, while I'm here. One major haplogroup of modern day Jewish Israelis are 1/3 of the population in Israel. If you explain 2/3 of the population are not coming from Semitic branch, so what is the Jewish DNA? Possibly 30% today. Well, what is the Jewish DNA? Well, I would show you in a second. Let me actually open up something for you. Isn't it interesting when you think about it that the people in the land could be converts, that it can be people who to Judaism. Now, does that seem far fetched? Really, does it seem far fetched? I mean, we already knew that people were converted to Judaism. They were converting to Judaism for a long time, right? Even since the Hellenistic period, right? You get proselytes, right? Converts to the faith. Then all of a sudden, later on, when the people fall 70 AD, you get a rise of a group, controversial period that a lot of people feel like has no ties to today, yet would be impossible if it had no ties today. The massive conversion of Turks that had happened in areas of Khazaria, that was something that had happened very, very subtly, but leaves us with a conclusion that would make sense that we have a question on who is who today and whatnot. All right, so let me open up a highlight here from one of these things. I gotta make sure I point it out on this because I want you to see this. I think it's a little up here, in fact. All right, so just a little thing from sources we were sharing a little earlier, and I think would be kind of important to point out right now. Let's see if I got that real fast. All right, that one's okay. I think I want to point out. I might end up typing the search to point it out, but I want to point it out clearly. All right, here it is. All right, so right, so when you think of about the Jews, right? Let's type something that is, because this, just the thought of like, what's up with the Jews today? Are the Jews today 100% sons of Abraham? Right? It would be impossible to even imagine that it would be. Just from the fact of different finds and everything like that, they're a mixed company. But how mixed is the company? Now, just looking at the haplogroup tree of Y chromosomes, honestly, in Ashkenazi Jews, we can see that they don't have one solid Y chromosome, and their largest group is starting to look more and more European. The J group is looking more and more European, and I'm saying via by fossils, by evidence of its ancient routes and its ancient origins, right? We can look at its fossils and we can start to realize that J starts off in the Caucasus, about 9,500, right? But it will initially come from iJ, which was up there by like Germany and stuff like there, until it split. And then it becomes your J-M304. When it goes to the Caucasus, goes up about close to Finland, stays there to about the Neolithic time frame, and it only goes into the Levant Bronze Age. That's what's important because it settles as in the areas of Europe for a long time. Now, notice the reason why this is important because we also have a lot of Indo-European groups here. Now, if we make this monophylactic, notice if I said iJK, what would all fit in iJK? J, I, T, Q, R, and all these groups here. Obviously, we know GHiJK would make HiJK and make iJK. But notice you got one group here that's on the outside, E. So what's interesting about the E group is that EYAP group would stand as a different group versus all the other groups, right? Having that yap. But what's also interesting is that we can actually note that a lot of Ashkenazis actually have that E group in them. That's very important because we can actually trace that E group all the way to the Semitic Natufians and things like that, right? The Proto-Semitic Natufians. That would be the trail of the Afro-Asiatic language where Semitic come from, right? That's very important. But we can see right here, just getting a little breakdown of some connections of some family ties of who they would say would be in connection to pretty much Ashkenazim and things like that. We can even see with this E right here, they're just going over and let us know a little bit back at this time, close to that E1B1A we was just talking about earlier that we had pointed out on that paper, right, with those fossils. So close, very close to that, as you can see with some of these years, very, very close. But it does say that on this E group, it says that it right here says cluster follows the same pattern as many of the large Ashkenazi Y DNA clusters, right? Just saying that they share direct male ancestral dating, right? Dating back to the first half or the second half of the first millennium, AD or CE, right? As evidenced by just talking about obviously its branching and everything. But it just goes on and says right here, when the Ashkenazi population began its massive expansion out of a small bottleneck population about 700 to 1,000 years ago. 700 to 1,000 years ago. Right? So that's very important. So it just we get a lot of breakdowns of E groups that would expand with the origin group of the Jews, shall we say, that this group would have expanded early on in their origin, right? But we actually know when we trace this certain line all the way back is that we start to find it as more of a Levantan origin. Now, what's interesting is that why is it so difficult to believe that if we're looking for we're looking for a mid Levantan, lower Levantan, and mid African culture? Why would they be African? Because they lived in the areas of Egypt, right? They dwelled with Egypt at the time when Egypt was mixing with Nubians, right? We can note that throughout the time of obviously the different pharaohs of pretty much right before the New Kingdom, stuff like that. So they come in and they pretty much intertwine with Nubia, right? We had talked about that before when we talk about certain ones like Tutmosis and other ones that were basically mixed with the women of Nubia. And we had talked about that Joseph was given a woman of the Egyptians, right? Moses got with a woman who was called a Cushite, right? We could talk about all the different mixtures that happened in that area with some of the so-called Hamitic women. Now, what's important about this is that we have to understand that this is one of the groups that's usually called said African. Now, if we know about the biblical narrative very well, then what is an African? What in the world is an African? And if we're concluding that an African is him, then we're not understanding the biblical narrative at all. The understanding of who is in Africa, right, depends who we are saying who is who, right? So we got to note the splits of the nodes. So I'm not going to go over the splits right now and all those things right now and the breakdowns and all that. But what I will express in the entirety is that we know without a doubt that there are three sons. There's evidence of three nodes, and that all people today are connected to one ultimate father. So that's very important. And what we found is more that the DEAP group shows, like we see with the D group being highly Asiatic, right? Being going into areas of Japan and stuff, and Asia, and E leaving the areas of Syria, right? as we know, even from geneticists, that E, especially E1B1, has a high connection to Syrians, Arabians, and Israelites. Very important. So that's going to be very important for understanding this family tie. So we're going to note that it's going to be in the area of the, even with the Ashkenaz. Connections with the Ashkenazim, it's easily proven that E has an early tie with and everything like that. That's going to be very important to know that it does have a high portion of being Semitic, even ancient root connections. We can find it to Semitic. So that's something that's important to know, that if we notice that the group is highly mixed, then there's a reason why. There's a reason why. If we follow the fossils, it'll tell us that some of the groups that they think was Jewish, if you find out what they actually are by their fossils, you might reconsider. You might consider that maybe you might have jumbled up which one is exactly the one of Abraham, which is going to be that separate one, not iJK under iJK, but that DE group. So that's going to be very important for his early origins, his early roots, root ties, and everything. So we can notice that, and we can notice that with multiple different trees that, they show those E's on there, that they have a high portion and everything. And if you trace it back, it goes all the way back. It goes all the way back to pretty much origins when you trace it all the way back. But you got to be careful. Even they admit like the mtDNA, you got to be careful in the mtDNA. If you've already seen the mtDNA studies, they already concluded that the female line is Indo-European. But the reason why that's important is because you got to know that they already admitted that. We already went over that dozens of times, that they already admitted that the women were Indo-European, and that's all right. That's just their honesty and whatnot. But that's key to let us know that we still got potential of finding who are the Israelite, also the Israelite women, which we find it more close to the ancient Tel Halula, Syria, L3 lineages, and L2, things like that, close to those lines, right? Very, very, very important. Very, very, very important. To answer that, family, amen, amen. If anyone has any more questions or statements before we take off, amen. And I leave, if tomorrow we're gonna have a conversation. I'm hoping that I can have a conversation with Jungle Jargon. Otherwise, he can have a conversation today. I'm free all day today. Tomorrow, I'm gonna be free for a decent amount. Then I work at the end of the day. But I wanted to share these tools because I believe that the ability to learn these things and to figure these things out, it just time. The time and study, patience, and the will to want to, because sometimes you got to sit there for hours and go over it. But after doing that for so many times, it's nice when you can kind of what's going on here after looking at different fossils. But the only thing is you got to look at, like you see, notice that whatever is older, right? Neolithic is older than Bronze Age. That means that Neolithic happened first, right? Events of Neolithic would have happened earlier than Bronze Age. So we would have to note what's going on in that time. So Neolithic, the reason why you want to look at Neolithic, Bronze Age, those are like key movements after the events of Noah, right? Mesolithic, Paleolithic, that's like right after Adam going into Noah. But some of those finds could be also exaggerated, because they could be like just groups that buried their dead on mountains that were actually formed by the flood, right? They could be burying their dead or in layers, and we could talk about this, that we actually know that many areas of the Levant are actually offset. The dates are offset, right? Just to kind of leave it with one more piece on what I'm saying, because we always talk sources and everything. I'll show you a professional. I'll show you a Egyptologist giving his little opinion on this. Is why I spoke of the Natufian and why the years were most likely exaggerated, right? Years of the Natufian were most likely exaggerated, and here's a quick reason why.
I think it's used to try to establish absolute dates. It's extremely problematic. It does have errors. There is something about radiocarbon in the ancient Near East that does not play nice with radiocarbon dating. Attempts to correlate radiocarbon dating with dendrochronology have not exactly been successful in the Near East because trees don't form tree rings in the Near East. So there isn't a separation of carbon between the tree rings like you find in, say, the northern or even the deep southern hemispheres. Now, with that said, I think radiocarbon does have a particular use. If you got, say, if you got two samples and you radiocarbon date them, and they have reasonable parity between them, the one thing you can determine is which one is older than the other. Radiocarbon dating will give you relative dating. I think when it's used to try to.
All right, so that's why we look at this for the understanding of relative dating. So very, very important. So that's why we go over this. So just getting the understanding what's older. So Neolithic culture, right? They don't have bronze tools and stuff like that. They're gonna be older, right? They're gonna obviously seem older, and most likely are older. And those of Bronze Age and all those things are going to be obviously after Neolithic, but before Iron Age, stuff like that. Older than that, Mesolithic. Older than that, Paleolithic, things of that sort. As you can see right here, even some Paleolithic here. Most likely got some Mesolithic on here, maybe. So that's important. That's giving us understanding of fossils, statements, understandings that we need to know about fossils. So very, 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 very important stuff. So with that, if you got any questions, let me know. I'm hoping to have a holy conversation with jungle jargon. But that was pretty much that you need to use if someone's noting whether it's modern finds, right? Like those snip trackers, right? The heat tracker, the Y tree, those are modern finds. A lot of those are modern finds. Even if it says Iron Age and try to tell you it's such and such age ago, it's not fossils, right? That's important. Versus the fossils, right? The actual culture, the material culture, the fossil record, the fossils that will actually be found, right? This is just a small portion of the dozens and dozens and dozens of fossils, right? Not all of them are going to be on just this little data sheet, but it does have a lot on this data sheet. So it's very useful to use this data sheet for a nice summary. And this one also is a nice one. This has over 1,700 fossils, right? Fossils. So that's a lot of fossils. So it has a lot in it, a lot inside of the paper on what they got. So that's very interesting. And obviously there's more fossils than just these, but these are like some of the like key fossils and stuff that's found, and also stuff that geneticists know about, because this was obviously given by a geneticist. And also these things are going to be papers and reports from geneticists. There's also, we got the certain maps and stuff that's important. I'll probably add some more to this, but I'll put this note in the description. That is a tool. These are like classic tools. There's more tools, but these are like some of the classic tools that are used to find fossils and to find modern connections and snips and things like that. And it's just a nice tool to use. But for the full summary, be careful in the years. If you see anything older than 3000 BC, anything older than Neolithic, always just know it's going to be exaggeration. That's important to know. In all the times I've been over this, all the times I go over this information, I start to notice that things, as they start to transition to the Neolithic, anything past the Younger Dryas and all those events, starts to look like exaggeration. That's why you get things looking like millions or billions of years and all that stuff, because all that's just exaggeration after the flood. So it's important to understand that the world today did not look like how it does today long ago. So long ago it was different, much different, much much different. All right. So I just wanted to be free to have that conversation today, as I think these things are deep and very important. So with that, maybe I'll take some time out of the week talk some history courses on some biblical matters that I think is very important to know about, especially in these times. So very, very, very important stuff. But as always, go into deep culture, ancient culture, and different things of that sort. So I'll put those in the description. They're going to have, like I said, fossils, actual cultures, actual information. That's stuff that you can use to find roots to like origins of peoples and stuff, right? So that's just something important to know. So with that, may you be blessed, may you be beloved, and